All my dear brothers and sisters, young people, friends, Brother John in the last class painted a picture of people going out from the beginning to be restored land of Israel to call Jews from all nations of the world and bring them through that refining process in the wilderness into the land. And Brother Jonathan in the first class talked about the Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of David, sitting on the throne of his father David and ultimately ruling all nations of the earth from God's city, Jerusalem. So the first two classes have had this worldwide focus on the purpose of God. In this third class, we are going to focus on a very small area of the Earth's surface, just 140 square miles. For those of you mathematically inclined, that's 0.502 of the entire Earth's surface of this planet. If you want another measure, it's about 1/6 the size of Warwickshire. But it has a population of 2.2 million. And that's going to be our focus, the Gaza Strip. It's an amazing piece of territory. It figures in Bible history and prophecy from 2000 BC right on to the future. And over the past 20 years, this place has seen death and destruction out of all proportion to its land area. It is called, therefore, the Gaza Strip. And we're going to look at its history, we're going to look at the present situation, and we're going to look through prophecy at the future. From at least the time of Abraham, this territory was inhabited by the Philistines. Come with me to the prophecy of Amos and chapter 9. You might just be having a think, as well as finding Amos chapter 9, about who the three gentlemen on the top of that slide might be. I'm going to do a quiz a little later on. So, Amos chapter 9, verse 7. Are not ye as the children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith Yahweh? Have not I brought up Israel out of the hand of Egypt, land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and the Syrians from Kir? Caphtor is generally thought to be the island of Crete, and from there these people sailed until they came to the coast of God's land. And there they settled in the territory that we now call the Gaza Strip. And they had 5 main cities: Ekron, Ashdod, Askelon, Gath, and Gaza. But turn with me to Joshua chapter 15. And we see what God said about the allocation of cities to the tribes of Israel. Joshua chapter 15 contains the list of the cities that fell to the lot of the children of Judah. So Joshua 15 and verse 20. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Judah according to their families. And then we go down to verse 45. Ekron with her villages, from Ekron even unto the sea, all that lay with their villages. Ashdod with her towns and her villages. Gaza with her towns and her villages, unto the river of Egypt and the great sea and the border thereof. So 3 of those cities, which we generally think to be in Philistine territory, were allocated to the tribe of Judah. So what happened? Well, turn on to Judges and chapter 1. When Judah is told to be the first to go up, and took Simeon his brother with him to fight against the inhabitants of the land. Judges chapter 1 and verse 17. And Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephath, and utterly destroyed it. And the name of the city was called Hormah. Also Judah took Gaza with the coast thereof, and Ashkelon with the coast thereof, and Ekron with the coast thereof. And the Lord was with Judah. So the 3 cities which in Joshua chapter 15 Israel were told were theirs, were taken by Judah in a time of faithfulness. But Israel turned from God. So God left the Philistines in the land to trouble them. Judges chapter 3 and verse 1. Judges 3 verse 1. Now these are the nations which Yahweh left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel had not known all the wars of Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof. namely the 5 lords of the Philistines, and all the Canaanites and the Zidonians and the Hivites that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal Hermon unto the entering in of Hamath. So God left the Philistines there to trouble them. And throughout the rest of the Old Testament, there is constant warfare between Israel and the Philistines. I don't claim that list to be exclusive, but there's 33 battles which were fought by Israel against the Philistines from the time of the judge Shamgar in Judges chapter 3 to the time of King Uzziah. Sometimes they subdued them, sometimes they put them under tribute, but Israel never vanquished them, but God did. Now, I should have told you to keep a marker in Amos, but I forgot. So let's find Amos again. This time we go to Amos chapter 1. Amos chapter 1 and verse 6. Thus saith Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Gaza and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they carried away captive the whole captivity to deliver them up to Edom. But I will send a fire on the wall of Gaza, which shall devour the palaces thereof. And I will cut off the inhabitants from Ashdod, and from him that holdeth the scepter from Ashkelon. And I will turn mine hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, saith the Lord Yahweh. And on to Zephaniah and chapter 2. Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 5. Zephaniah 2, verse 5. Woe unto the inhabitants of the sea coast. Make a mental note of that phrase, the sea coast. We're going to meet it again when we get to the future. Woe unto you, inhabitants of the sea coast, the nation of the Kerethites. The word of Yahweh is against you, O Canaan, the land of the Philistines. I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. And the sea coast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds for flocks. So the Philistines were completely destroyed. They no more exist in the earth. And whatever the people who dwell in the Gaza Strip might try to say, they are not descended from the ancient Philistines. So let's move on now to the unveiling of the purpose of God in the book of Revelation. We know that the book of Revelation is a book of 7s. There are 7 seals as God went to war against pagan Rome. There are 7 trumpets as God went to war against Christian Rome, first in the east and then in the west, and 7 vials when God went to war against the Holy Roman Empire. So under trumpets 1 to 4, the barbarians from northern Europe came down and defeated the Roman Empire in the west. And it's interesting to notice that each of those 4 barbarian tribes who are listed in Revelation chapter 8, they are all Arian Christians. They rejected the doctrine of the Trinity. They believed there was one God. So it was a religious war against the Catholics in the Roman Empire. And then we come to Revelation 9 and the rise of Muhammad and the religion of Islam. Revelation chapter 9 and verse 1. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there came smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And so Muhammad started his new religion. And when he died, he was succeeded by his close friend, Abu Bakr, who became the first caliph of Islam. And Abu Bakr sent the troops out under trumpet 5 all the way along North Africa, and they crossed the Straits of Gibraltar. They took over Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, and they got as far north in France as Tours, where they were defeated by Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer. And it's the first time in history that an army of cavalry has been defeated in battle by an army only having infantry. Charles Martel knew what he was doing, and they were driven back. But before they were sent out, Abu Bakr gave them their instructions for the war. And what I want you to do is rest your eyes upon Revelation 9, verse 4, while I read to you the words of Abu Bakr. Remember, you are always in the presence of God. Let not your victory be stained with the blood of women or children. Destroy no palm trees, nor burn any fields of corn. Cut down no fruit trees, nor do any mischief to cattle, only such as you kill to eat. You will find people that belong to the synagogue of Satan, who have shaven crowns, the monks, the priests of the Catholic Church. Be sure you cleave their skulls and give them no quarter till they turn Inhabitants or pay tribute. I don't think for a minute that Abu Bakr had read Revelation 9 verse 4, but God foresaw what he would say and caused those words to be written there in the 4th verse of Revelation 9. So the Saracens conquered all of North Africa, and the Ottoman Turks took Constantinople in 1453. And so was formed the Ottoman Empire. And there it is at the height of its eminence in 1580 under Suleiman the Magnificent. But by 1869, the 6th vial in Revelation 16 was being fulfilled. The great river Euphrates was drying up. And from that vast area of territory, by the time we get to 1869, that's all that's left of the Ottoman Empire. And particularly notice that Egypt is not part of the Ottoman Empire anymore. We should come to that in a minute. We're now going to turn to something completely different, because the angels work in so many different fields of the world's religions and politics and nations. So we turn from the Ottoman Empire to general elections in this country in the 19th century. And there are the statistics. There were two parties in those days. It's not like the state of affairs we had in the recent Gorton by-election, where there was about 11 parties contesting the election. There were just two parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives. And in the first of those two elections, the Liberals won handsomely, as they did in the last two. But in between, the Conservatives got in with a majority of over 100. And the statistics are interesting. The Conservative actually polled less votes than the Liberals, but they won more seats, so they formed the government. The angels were at work. Just look at who were the leaders of the Liberal and Conservative parties. William Ewart Gladstone, leader of the Liberals, well-known figure in English 19th century history. And leader of the Conservatives, Benjamin Disraeli. As far as I can determine, the only Jew who has ever occupied 10 Downing Street. But as a Jew, he was forbidden by English law to stand for Parliament. The thing was impossible. So what happened? His father was Isaac Disraeli, who was a leading member of a synagogue in London. And the synagogue asked him to become an elder. And he was willing to do that. But when they said that in order to become an elder, he'd got to pay the synagogue £40, he said, no, not doing it. And he left the synagogue. And he had his son, Benjamin, baptized as an Anglican, which meant that ultimately, in due course, he could stand for Parliament. Benjamin's mother was related to the Rothschilds, and they will come into the picture very shortly. He spent 16 months in his formative years traveling in the Middle East. He knew the territory well. He understood its significance. In 1837, he entered Parliament, and in that election in 1874, he became Prime Minister. He said, "I have reached the top of the greasy pole." Well, he didn't last long at the top, but the angels had a work for him to do, because the Suez Canal had now been built. In 1863, before the canal was completed, the national debt of Egypt was £3 million. That's in their money, a lot more. It will be a lot more today. In 1869, the Suez Canal was opened. Egypt owned 44% of the shares. But the Khedive of Egypt, the ruler of Egypt, was a spendthrift. And by 1875, Egypt's debt had risen to 100 million. Egypt was effectively bankrupt. In stepped Benjamin Disraeli. He quietly arranged, without telling Parliament what he was doing, imagine Mr. Starmer doing this today, he quietly arranged to borrow £4 million of 1875 money from the Rothschilds Bank, assuring them he would pay it back. That's equivalent to nearly £1 billion of today's money. And he bought the 44% of the Suez Canal shares from Egypt. And he put financial advisors in Egypt to ensure that they didn't get into that sort of level of debt again. He ruled, reigned, held office as Prime Minister for just those 5 years. Gladstone came back and won the next election, and within a year, Disraeli was dead. He had been used by God to work out his purpose. So Britain was in Egypt. Gladstone, the next Prime Minister, and his successors tried desperately to get the UK out of Egypt. But financial issues, disease, rebellious Arabs, and other factors stopped that from happening. The angels wanted Britain in Egypt. So when World War I broke out, there was a British military presence in Egypt, the Egyptian Expeditionary Force. Britain had become de facto the king of the south of Daniel chapter 11. And then 3 men appeared on the scene who changed the face of the Middle East. Here's the first of them. Does anybody know who that is? Sorry? No. In a room full of Christadelphians, someone really ought to know who that is. Yes, at the back. Yes, Henry Grattan Guinness, who was an Irish Protestant preacher and Bible student. And he was fascinated by Bible chronology. And this is what he published in his book in 1860 something or other. I've got it somewhere. He said, if you take the 7 times of Daniel chapter 4, 2,520 solar years, and you compute them from the beginning of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar over the kingdom of Babylon, it runs out in 1917. If you take the last number in Daniel, 1335, in lunar years, because we're dealing with Muslims, and date that from Muhammad's flight from Mecca to Medina, that runs out in 1917. And in his book, Light for the Last Days, on page 255, he wrote these words: there can be no question that those who live to see this year, 1917, which he knew he wouldn't live to see it, will have reached one of the most important, perhaps the most momentous of these terminal years of crisis. That book was published and widely read. I'm sure you know who gentleman number 2 is. Arthur Balfour, yes. We know Arthur Balfour as Foreign Secretary in 1917 under David Lloyd George's government. But in 1903, Balfour was actually Prime Minister. And in that year, he read Grattan Guinness's book. And he wrote to Grattan Guinness and said, I've read your book and I agree with your calculations. So Balfour saw himself as an instrument of God's purpose, that the Jews might be restored to Palestine, and that would lead to the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. He was convinced that he was a man chosen to do something to move forward the purpose of God. And again, I'm pretty sure you'll know this one. General Allenby, yes. So the British Expeditionary Force in Egypt was under General Murray, who commanded from the rear in Cairo. They fought a battle at Gaza and they took the city of Gaza. Britain managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory because Murray was convinced that, or concerned, that the Turks would come back in the night with reinforcements. So he evacuated the city which he'd just taken. And of course the Turks came in and took it back over. The second time Murray attacked Gaza, the Turks were very well prepared and the British lost heavily. So Murray was recalled. And the Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, said, I want Allenby to go. And Allenby said, no, I'm not going. The last man has just lost 2 battles. The troops are dispirited. They're down on material. It's crazy to move stuff from the Western Front to the Middle East. I'm not going. Top men in the British military talked to Allenby about Bible prophecy and convinced him that it was to be the role of Britain to drive the Turk out of Palestine and that it would happen in 1917. It was then July, only 5 months to go, and Allenby was still in Britain. He'd got to get a slow boat to Cairo. But he was so fired up by exposition of Bible prophecy, by people like the First Sea Lord, John Fisher, that he determined he would go and fulfill those prophecies. And so he went. He was told by another general, "You're walking on velvet. You could get all your strategy wrong, but you'll be in Jerusalem by the 31st of December. It was actually the 9th. He got there. And so, in 1917, in November, the Balfour Declaration was issued. In December 1917, the land was liberated. In 1922, Britain took on the mandate to govern the territory. That mandate ran to the 14th of May 1948, and on the following day, David Ben-Gurion declared the State of Israel. But the UN had been trying to sort out this problem of the Middle East, of the Jews and the Arabs. And so in November 1947, UN Resolution 181 was published. And notice the key word. It is about the partition of Palestine. And we're going to meet that word in Joel chapter 3 a little later. Dividing Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. But Jerusalem was not to be part of either state. It was to be, if you read the resolution, it was to be a corpus separatum run by the United Nations. How come that two Latin words appear in a United Nations resolution? Because the Pope's ambassador to the United Nations insisted they be put in. Brother Jonathan had a picture of the Pope on the screen earlier on, exercising his power. And it was his determination that neither Jew or Arab should control the holy places in Jerusalem. He wanted them for himself. So, what happened? Well, the map on the left shows the territories that the United Nations gave to the Jews and to the Arabs. The light sort of yellowish colour is the Jewish state, and the grey colour is the Arab state. The map on the right shows what actually happened in the War of Independence in 1948, where the Jews captured far more land than the United Nations had said that they should have. So that is the 1948 border of Israel. And the Gaza Strip at that point was part of Egypt. Then came the 1967 war. And again, the map on the left is before, it's the 1948 borders. And the map on the right shows what Israel took over in 1967, which includes the Gaza Strip. So Gaza now became part of Israel. So what's the current situation? Well, after the Six-Day War, when Israel had taken over Gaza, Israel established 21 Jewish settlements in the Gaza Strip. But in 2005, the Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon gave the Strip to the Palestinians, to Yasser Arafat and his Fatah movement. The following year, 2006, they held an election, and the West rejoiced. Wonderful, democracy has come to Palestine. The Arabs are having a democratic election. And of course, Hamas won the election. The word Hamas in Hebrew means violence. David in his Psalms prays, "Save me from the man of Hamas." How fitting for today. Because the Hamas covenant read, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. So those who understood the situation biblically were not surprised when the 7th of October 2023 unfolded. and Hamas invaded the south of Israel and took 250 hostages. So what's the current situation? On the 29th of September last year, Mr. Trump announced his peace plan for Gaza, and phase one was put into operation. Phase one required that Hamas deliver back all the hostages or their remains, and that Hamas disarm. On the 14th of January this year, Steve Witkoff, who's Trump's ambassador to the Middle East, announced that phase one had been completed, although Hamas had not disarmed, and phase two has now begun. 22nd of January this year was the signing ceremony for President Trump's Board of Peace for Gaza. And there's a list of some of the countries who have signed up to the Board of Peace. Notably, the EU, Great Britain, Canada are not part of that collection of nations. But the UN has approved it. So conveniently, Mr. Trump organised that the first meeting of the Board of Peace should take place 9 days before Prophecy Day, which gave me time to absorb what they had decided and put it into my notes. So 26 nations attended the meeting, 20 other nations, including the UK and EU members, attended as observers. 5 of those nations pledged $7 billion for the reconstruction of Gaza. Mr. Trump said he would add another 10 billion to that, although he's not told anybody where it's coming from. But the UN estimate to rebuild Gaza is not 7 billion, it's not 17 billion, it's 70 billion. 5 nations have pledged troops for the International Stabilization Force, and the American general who's been put in charge of that force when it's formed has said he wants 20,000 troops on the ground in Gaza. But currently, there is no evidence that Hamas is willing to disarm. It's estimated they've got 60,000 automatic weapons stowed away. But what Hamas are doing is 2 things. They are basically taking the armour, the weapons, the uniform off a lot of their troops. And those people are presenting themselves as Arabs who will help the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, because the Board of Peace has set up a national committee for the administration of Gaza. And Hamas is working very hard to make sure that its people populate that committee. And Hamas is also going round the traders in Gaza and saying, we would like some protection money off you, please. If you give us some money, we'll look after you and you can continue trading. If you don't, then you won't be able to trade anymore. And that's exactly what we should expect from Bible prophecy about Gaza's future. That Hamas, or some successor very much like Hamas, will be firmly in charge in Gaza at the time of the end. So what do the prophecies foretell concerning the Gaza Strip? Let's look at 3 passages. The first one is Joel and chapter 3. And we shall meet some words that we have seen already. Joel chapter 3 and verse 1. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. And we've seen it, brothers and sisters. 1948, the state of Israel. 1967, Jerusalem liberated and became, in 1980, the eternal capital of the state of Israel. In that context, which is where we are now, I will also gather all nations, that's Armageddon language from Revelation 16, and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. That's UN Resolution 181, the partition of Palestine, now called the 2-state solution. The world is determined to go that way. Verse 3, they have cast lots for my people, have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they might drink. Yea, what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Remember those words from Amos, the sea coasts. Tyre and Sidon in the north, of course, has been the territory of Hezbollah, and the coast of Palestine very much the territory of Hamas. And God says, middle of verse 4, will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me, swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head, because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Gentiles, that ye might remove them far from their border. We've already heard about Jerusalem in Zechariah 14, half of the city going into captivity. We've seen Hamas take hostages. It will happen again. And they won't just take hostages, they'll sell them as slaves. And that again has a historical background, as we shall see. So verse 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Margin, sanctify war. That word occurs 172 times in the Old Testament. It's translated 108 times as sanctify and 25 times as hallow. This is a holy war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And we have seen civilian aircraft being taken over and used as flying bombs and crashed into buildings. We have seen motor cars being changed into vehicles of destruction as they're driven into crowds. This is our world. Verse 13, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, margin, the valley of thrashing. That's Armageddon, a heap of sheaves in a valley for threshing. For the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of threshing. As Gog invades, the Palestinians will seek advantage, just as others have done before. While we're in the prophecies, just find Obadiah, because we're going to come back to Obadiah in a minute. And once you've found Obadiah, keep a marker there and come back to Psalm 137. We just read in Joel about God gathering the nations. That's the list of the nations in Ezekiel 38. And they're almost all gathered into the right place. Russia's still got bases in Syria. Persia, well, we'll see what's happened. I was shown a news headline just before the class saying that the supreme leader of Iran is dead. We will see what transpires there. But Iran has long been allied with Russia, and prophecy requires it to remain so. The Russian and Ethiopian governments have signed an agreement that Russia will facilitate the building of a nuclear reactor in Ethiopia. You only do that for good friends. And Russia is courting both sides in Libya. We'll see what happens with Sheba and Dedan, but certainly before the present lot went off, they were moving closer to Israel. And Britain, as Tarshish, has several naval bases in the territory. So the nations are almost all in the right places. Psalm 137, of course, is the captivity psalm. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We go to verse 7. Remember, O Yahweh, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundations. O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. We notice the reference there to Edom. We shall see more about Edom shortly, particularly in the prophecy of Obadiah, because Edom is the focus of Obadiah. The Edomites in the time of the Babylonian Empire and Babylonian invasion were like the pack of hyenas that follows the lion. When the lions had sufficient of its kill, then the hyenas devour the rest. Obadiah and verse 10. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots on Jerusalem, even thou wast as one of them. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother, in the day that he became a stranger. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of their distress. Thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. For the day of Yahweh is near upon all the heathen. As thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. And those things all happened in the time of the Babylonian invasion of Judah. But they are a foreshadowing of what is still to happen. Verse 17. But, and now we move into the future, upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them. Therefore there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh hath spoken it. And so we look at the land. And there's the 1948 borders of Israel. We're going down now to look carefully at the geographical implications of Obadiah verses 19 and 20. And they of the south shall possess the Mount of Esau, territory which modern Israel has never had. And they of the plain, the Philistines, the Gaza Strip. And they shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria, the West Bank. And Benjamin shall possess Gilead. Brother John referred to Gilead in his class when he took us to Zechariah chapter 10 and showed how the returning 10 tribes are going to be settled in territory which modern Israel has never had, including Gilead and Lebanon. And verse 20, the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites even unto Zarephath. There's Lebanon. And the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, shall possess the cities of the south. And so this prophecy is telling us that Israel, which may by that time have been forced back to its 1948 borders, Israel is going to break out from that territory and take all the land which was promised to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And so we come finally to Isaiah chapter 11. Brother John had me a little concerned when he went into detail in this chapter, but he's not trodden on all my toes. But it is wonderful how two classes on two quite different topics about future prophecy coincide in the same passages. So in Isaiah 11, which is clearly a kingdom prophecy, it talks about the cow and the bear feeding together, the little child playing on the hole of the asp. It talks about righteousness and truth in the world. And we've read in verses 11 and 12 how God's going to set his hand the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left. Brother Thomas correctly in Elpis Israel foretold that there will be two stages in the restoration of the Jews, both premillennial, the first before the advent of Christ and the second after it. We have seen the first. Brother John has outlined the route for the second. The Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt, Brother John mentioned, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, from the isles of the sea, and shall set up an ensign for the nations, shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, Ephraim, the 10 tribes, and gather together the dispersed of Judah, those who have fled the land as the invasion came in, from the 4 corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. And so they become God's battle axe and his weapons of war. And what's the first thing they do? Verse 14. They shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. They invade the Gaza Strip, and with good reason for the history of what has happened in that place. And then, it says, they spoil them of the east together. They shall lay their hand upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. We've already seen several references to Edom. There it is in ancient times, with Moab above it and Ammon above that. At the moment, most of that territory is the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, ruled by King Abdullah II, who is holding the lid down on a lot of Syrian refugees and a lot of militant Palestinians, while accepting water and oil from Israel. Things could change dramatically in that territory, and I believe that the scriptures foretell that just as there's going to be a violent and aggressive adversary to Israel in the Gaza Strip, which we hope will be Hamas, because that means the purpose of God hasn't got long to run. But if they should be overthrown, another power will rise up in their place with the same attitude. And there's also going to be changes, says Isaiah 11 and other passages, on the east side of Jordan. It's interesting, Brother John mentioned Brother Thomas's views on things in his class. Brother Thomas expected the return of Christ in his day. He had correctly predicted the end of papal power in 1870, and he was expecting Christ to return shortly thereafter. It didn't happen. Of course, when Brother Thomas wrote those things, there was hardly a Jew in the land, no settlements. But he envisaged the first stage of the restoration, that nucleus that he wrote about, all happening while the saints were in Sinai being judged. There's now a lot less to be fulfilled before Christ and the saints come to deliver Israel in the land. So, as Brother John said in the conclusion of his class, our call could come today. So, lessons. God is in control of the world. He rules in the kingdom of men. The people who are chosen, the people who are elected, the people who are disposed are all happening according to his will. And as we've seen in these classes, he's revealed his purpose with the earth through prophecy in the Bible. And these prophecies show the return of Jesus to judge this world in righteousness is imminent. The remaining question, in Brother John's words, our call could come today. Are you, am I, ready for his coming?
Don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment in the comment section and let us know what you thought, and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Please share it and spread the word. Thanks for watching, and remember to come back soon.